Hey everybody, John Hutchings with Healthy Edge Rochester, and I am joined this week by Anissa Buckley. Well, you've done just about everything, so we're trying to introduce this, but we're going to talk about nutrition. We're going to talk about food
Trends,
mapping.
the future of food.
You mapped food.
Sure.
We'll talk about what that means. We're going to talk about fitness, adventure training, Iron Men or woman. Do they call it Iron Woman?
No.
They just call it Iron Man.
I know.
And you just have to accept that gender.
I have so far. Good
Are
thought
you
though.
pushing back?
I might.
mean, if there ever was a climate for it, today
You
is
are
when you
absolutely
can push
right.
back against
Could
that.
be a whole civil suit there.
It's a hashtag in the making. Not my Iron Man.
You know what? This is the first time it's been said right here
Not
on
my Iron
Healthy
Man.
Edge.
Yeah. Well, we're trendsetters here.
Not my
And we're going to talk about climbing mountains. But real life food and fitness, you were on my radio show.
I was.
Healthy, I think it was Fitness Edge Radio back then, over at Entercom, with Mike Danger was my co-host.
Yep.
I switched about halfway. I did about 80 episodes there, 80 over at iHeart, where I didn't have a co-host. I was the show. I was the show. It was fun. But anyway, we talked back then, and you had a unique concept that was kind of, I feel, in the Rochester market anyway, kind of ahead of the curve, so to speak. With you had meals that facilitated good health, along with fitness, which we all think of when we think of good health. And you had like a wellness, like a spiritual component, right? Like a spirit animal.
Health coaching. It wasn't really
Health
spiritual.
coaching. No, you didn't
Spiritual
get
would
into
be like
dogma.
more meditation and yoga.
Okay.
No, we had specifically 500 calorie meals, and we were actually the first in the market. Ironically, not going to say anybody stole anything, but a very large grocer showed up with 500 calorie meals about 6 months later. And a lot of other competitors came into the market pretty quickly, but we were the first one to do that. So we had the fresh 500 calorie meals, and our whole philosophy there was to get people to make it easy, right? To make it convenient so people didn't have to have that excuse that, I couldn't find anything in the house to eat. I just ended up ordering McDonald's. No, you've got your meals. You know they're 500 calories. You know they meet the requirements for health. Yep. Then we had the fitness classes and we had the health coaching to kind of pull it all together. And really the concept was to have that under one roof.
And you did it.
We did it, yeah.
Yeah.
We
So
did
you
it.
did that for a little while. And, that kind of, you came from corporate America, right?
I did, yeah.
Talk about some of the companies you worked for. I heard Reebok in there, right?
Yeah, I
Procter &
started
Gamble.
out here at Xerox, actually,
Okay.
right out of undergrad. I went to Cornell, got my undergraduate degree there, and then I worked for Xerox, Procter & Gamble, it's a big consumer goods company, Sprint, Telecom, Reebok in fitness, Bird's Eye Foods here locally again. So I kind of moved around the country a lot, and basically in the midst of that, kind of went back to school, got my MBA. And after kind of all of that, really it kind of all came to a head when I was at Bird's Eye, because I was working with Dennis Mullen, who was the CEO at the time, and our marketing team.
Yeah.
And we were really focused on following the health and wellness trends. And I personally just saw an opportunity there that wasn't being addressed at grocery retail, which was helping consumers know how to make better choices for food. And so I started a database that collected all the nutrition fact panels and ingredient statements off of all of the products in the grocery store, scored those against FDA claims, and really sliced and diced that a number of ways for most of the retailers around the country. Safeway, Kroger, Wakefern, Stop and Shop, lots of big retailers were basically pulling that data from the database and appending it to their price labels so that when shoppers walked down the aisles, they could identify a product that was low in sodium or gluten-free or whatever it is they were looking for.
Does that still exist? I mean, what year was that? I mean, approximately.
I sold the company in 2007 to a large shelf tag printer for retail, and it's still in existence today.
I was going to say, I'm trying to think if I see a lot of these tags on those shelves in Wegmans. Do I see those?
Well, what you're seeing, so Wegmans is one retailer that Wegmans likes to do things that's proprietary for Wegmans, so they actually never really did buy into the database, but most other retailers in the country did, with the exception of Walmart and Wegmans. And Wegmans, and more what you're seeing is, first of all, it's turning to digital, right? So it's very costly for a grocer to actually put those shelf tags up. It's a lot easier now for them to have it on apps. So I think shoppers have gotten very accustomed to having an app with them when they shop. Or a lot of the times now manufacturers are just putting it right on the product. So there's
Gotcha.
less of a need to have
So
those shelf
10
lives.
years ago, I mean, I'm trying to remember.
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing this for 20 years, so that was about the halfway point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was I educating people on how to read labels? I think I was,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know if it was that common. I mean, the average person probably, how did they pick their food? I mean, how did people shop before we were aware that this was bad for us, this is good for us, gluten-free, all
You're
that
so
stuff.
opening the door for a great conversation because actually, you think about it, everyone's individual, right? So you may have heart disease in your family and you may be focused on a low saturated fat diet.
Mm-hmm.
I may have stroke in my family. I may be looking for low sodium. So you and I may be looking for different things. And where the industry is going now, which is so fascinating to me, is all about the human genome and DNA. So you can have a DNA test done and you can know, hey, you, John, you actually metabolize salmon much better than you metabolize beef. You should be eating a high salmon diet for your particular health markers. So that's becoming hot. And there's some companies, one is called Habit out of San Francisco. It's partially owned by Nestle. And what they do is they run the whole DNA sequence for you. They come back and they tell you what kind of diet you should be on. And then they actually make and deliver the meals to your home. I mean, can you get any better than that?
You can't. That's kind of Terminator.
Yeah, it
talk,
is.
Right?
It is, totally.
We're kinda
yeah. And there's a lot of
jumping
companies kind of going in that path. So I think that's the future for food.
Yeah, that's
very,
crazy.
very customized, right?
So that's a far jump from where you identified there was this gap in the market.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So your personal odyssey, coming back to you, I mean, it led you built that company, you sold that company, and you said, I'm going to start real life food and fitness somewhere along the way in between there.
I did.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
What was your motivation for that? I mean, did you feel like you could effectively change people's habits through this entity that engaged them? I mean, you like working out. We've talked about this.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, was it your belief that most people did like working out? They would come and then you could talk to them about the other stuff?
I think most people still don't like to work out.
I'm of that mindset. I mean,
okay, really?
well,
Your entire
myself
life
personally,
is like fitness.
No, I think most people have that mindset. They don't like to work out. And I like to not work out as much, if not slightly more, than I do like to work out. I just know the benefits, and it does feel really good when you're done doing it.
Yeah, so I think
But
two
I understand
things.
that motivation, but I'm curious about your, what was you perused the landscape and you're like, okay, I see these trends, because you've got, you've got a resume, you've got the education, you've got the experience. When you say I see a trend, it has some value to it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so what did you see that said, hey, real life food and fitness is the jump?
Two things came into play. One is my mother was diagnosed with dementia, and I had been on a plane every week for about 8 years, literally every week. I'm not even making that up. So I was never home, and I was at a point where I was landing on a Thursday night. I was driving to Ithaca, where my mother lived, my parents lived, and every other weekend my sister and I were alternating taking care of her. And then I get back on a plane on Monday, and it was killing me. And it was killing me more because I wasn't there. I couldn't be with my parents that much. So we moved my parents up to Rochester. We made that decision. And for me, I knew I needed to get out of the job I was in because I was working. I was a workaholic for about 30 years, frankly. The second reason is that we saw high intensity interval training come hugely into the market, right? All of a sudden, everybody wanted to understand, to your question about, do people want to work out? People want to minimize their time working out, right?
Condense it down. That's what HIIT's
and this
all
is
about.
It's what it's all about. Get that heart rate up, and you're going to burn more calories in a shorter period of time. You don't have to be on a treadmill for hours and hours. So we saw that trend coming. We saw the need for convenience food, which obviously has completely taken over, right? We've got full chains now that are all about putting, calories are required on menu boards, right? So now people can go anywhere in the country and know how many calories they're eating. That wasn't the case back in 2005-06 when we first started with the food business and on. So I think those two reasons were really, they kind of came together for me to say, all right, I need to get off a plane. I want to do something still health and wellness related, and that's what happened.
There you go.
Yeah.
Now that was a short period of time in your life.
It was
you
a
ended
short
up
period.
selling that.
I did. I went through. I had some personal issues, some personal reasons to get out of that business. And so then I kind of took this complete tangent in my life.
You did.
Which has been the last 3 years.
You climbed mountains and did Ironmans.
I did. That's what I did.
Did all this stuff. I want to jump to that, but I want to kind of, finish with this, kind of conversation with the food mapping.
The DNA?
Yeah, where do you see it going now? Are you totally removed from that way of thinking and you're just kind of in this different place where you're climbing mountains and doing Ironmans? Or are you still fascinated by that? Are you still picking up the, your news feed and reading articles and seeing where it's going? Our HIT training is kind of swung back. There's starting to be some evidence where, is it as effective as we once thought it was? And there's some evidence that says not maybe. The fitness industry is going to swing like that.
Yeah.
But
as is food.
Yeah, food. So where are you now? What do you see?
So I'm looking at a couple of startup opportunities. So to answer your question, yes, I still have a lot of passion for that. Mm-hmm. I always have passion for really anything that's futuristic. I love to look at trends and see where they're going and kind of just try to identify where there's an opportunity to help, to help people be better because, like most people, I've had my struggles with weight, as I just shared to you. It's been a rough year because I did Ironman a year and a half ago, and I haven't been able to keep that level of activity up because it takes 25, 30 hours a week to train for an Ironman.
Right, you're kind of locked into your training routine.
You're out on a bike 6 hours a day, and you can't get enough calories.
The weight loss happens as a byproduct.
Exactly. You can't get enough calories in your diet.
Right now, you don't have something on the calendar.
You want to stress that a little more?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Well, we'll talk about that too, about the psychology of setting goals and working.
How much weight have you put on now?
No, we don't have to beat that horse. But,
I'm just kidding. So there's a company in the UK I'm looking at, and I'm not going to get into a whole lot of details. It's just that they want to bring
Unless you want to.
Maybe the next podcast. How's that? That way you'll bring me back.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what they will do is they will have an app that does something that nobody else does right now, and it's about helping people again. It's geo-mapping. It's helping people make decisions on food choices that are very relevant to where they are. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to say much more than that. Just that I'm still in the business. I'm still kind of looking around. Yeah. Haven't made a decision on it. I'm looking at a couple. Vertical farming is another one I'm looking at. I don't know how familiar you are with that, but that's another interesting one.
Vertical goes up.
Vertical goes up, yep.
Horizontal is
so no rising. Soil, no sun, no pesticides. Essentially, you're growing in warehouses in cities, so your carbon footprint for delivering that food is reduced. You've got 30 sensors on each plant. You can actually optimize the nutritional value of that plant. Wow. So again, futuristic stuff, right? So it's all about how do you grow that plant and give it more nitric oxide or give it more vitamin D or whatever it needs to have.
And you're growing it in an environment where there's no pests,
no
no
pesticides,
funguses.
No sun, no soil.
Yeah.
And the real reason for this is, twofold, right? One is trying to bring the cost of transportation down for food. But also trying to, think about the weather, right? The atrocities we've had this year, how many hurricanes we've had, and how much is going on with the weather. And so this allows you to control for that, right? And then also it allows you to optimize the nutrient value of the food, which our soil is all being depleted. So those are the reasons why this is happening.
You're not talking about genetic modification.
No, it's not
because
genetic
everyone's
modification.
pushing back against that. What you make me think of when you talk about that, though? When you go to this Wegmans right now, you can buy strawberries from Driscoll's. Mm-hmm. And they look wonderful, but they're like fleshy and have no taste to me. Mm-hmm. Because they're grown in some sort of hydroponics or something like that. I think the devil's advocate for this type of technology is, what's the food going to taste like? You're not drawing nutrition out of the soil.
You can adjust for taste, for flavor.
Really?
Yeah.
You can engineer flavor into your food.
You can. Well,
there goes my argument. So I got no real argument.
And there is some genetic modification involved in some of the pieces that we're talking about, but genetic modification isn't always as negative as people think. As a matter of fact, we wouldn't actually be able to feed the world if we didn't have it. So it allows plants to be able to fight against pests because maybe they've developed a new way to do that. So there's lots of reasons why GMO is not as negative as a lot of people think it is, but I don't want to probably necessarily get into a whole discussion about that.
I'm
not prepared to get into a whole discussion.
Nor am I. I don't have enough information to,
Yeah.
throw you up some
It's a big
scenarios.
topic, but a lot of the time, I think
no,
a lot
yes.
of us just jump on bandwagons because we feel like, oh, it's got to be a frankenfood. Well,
you
not
see
really.
the three-eyed fish or whatever, the
Yeah.
GMO shows kids are eating this corn and then they're having all kinds of birth defects and things like that.
The first question is, should kids be eating a lot of corn, right? I mean, omega-6 versus omega-3s.
Yeah. It's deep.
Where will
we
go?
Stuff.
We're going somewhere other than this conversation.
I was asking you, where do you see us now and where are we going? I think for me, in the fitness, health, wellness realm, it always comes down to what will the average person be doing?
Mm-hmm.
What is in their best interest and how do we get them to act in their best interest? I mean, for 20 years I've been sitting across from people having them tell me, I know I should do this, work out, eat right, yet they don't. To know and not do is to not know, right? So how do we employ technology to get the average person to do what's in their best interest when it seems so counter to intuitive to what happens now?
Yeah.
January's right here.
Right.
We're on the precipice of it. Mm-hmm. Millions of people are going to make a New Year's resolution. Many of those people won't stick with it.
But I think a lot of the things we've talked about, so whether it's the prepared meals, it's adding nutrition to foods, it's calling out better foods for people, it's apps that identify diet plans and help people track it, those are all mechanisms to make it easier, right? And that's really one step in the right direction because we didn't have any of this stuff 15 years ago. So we're making strides, and I do think, right or wrong, I'm just going to say it, there's probably going to be a pill at some point that's going to help with this. There's probably going to be, the genetic coding that we're going to uncover is going to help us to identify who has a propensity for obesity, and obviously we'll have probably some solutions for how to manage that. So I do think it's all coming in the future. Today, we're still at that point where, it's about yourself and the discipline that you have. But again, taking those steps to make it easier for yourself and planning, a little bit of planning ahead of time. By the way, there is a great book out. I just have to add this.
All right, plug in book time.
Plug for the book. It has nothing to do with me. I just read this book on my way to Africa a couple months ago. It's called Grit. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Probably.
It's by Angela Duckworth. She's at UPenn. And the book actually proves out. It's not just a hypothesis. She's proven out that grit is basically responsible for people's success. I think we all kind of know that innately.
Is grit an acronym for something,
or
is it like
right? It's discipline.
So grit is just like what?
But she's talked to the presidents and the Seattle Seahawks coach and the lots of top athletes. And I think what is interesting is she gives you formulas in this book. And so, as a parent, which I'm not, but I love to talk about as if I am. I think as people are parents, what's interesting is she gives you a formula. Like if your child is in a sport and doesn't want to stay in the sport for the season, she strongly encourages you to keep them there, right? That's because you learn, as you know, it may not be easy initially, right? Training for Ironman, I did not know how to do a triathlon, but I signed up for an Ironman. That was a real learning, and so. It's all about what you learn along the way. And if you had given up, if I had given up because I didn't know how to make a transition from getting out of the water and getting on a bike, I never would have been able to complete that Ironman. And so it's the same thing with kids in sports. If you keep them in and sort of get them over that hump, which maybe is initially feeling uncomfortable or not feeling successful, not being able to perform, over time, they will build confidence and they'll be able to be more resilient and handle things better. So it's a great book. I just have to say it was a great book.
It sounds like a great book. I like to bring it all back to the fitness application. And like I was saying, how do you get the average person to do what's in their best interest?
Yeah.
So if you can teach a child how to have grit and resiliency, I guess the question is, can you teach an adult the same thing? I mean, how do we... The person that walks in this door, I keep pointing out there because that's World Gym exercise floor, 8,000 square feet of free weight equipment.
Is that an advertisement?
Yeah, it might have been a little product drop there. But the person walking in the door knows that this is good for them. They know it's a positive. They know they want what this offers. But how do you get them to be resilient and stick with it?
All I can say is exactly what we've talked about. How do you make it easier for them here, right? You make it more welcoming for them. You have hours that are, accommodating for people.
Right.
You have classes that are of interest. I mean, these are all obvious things, and I'm not coming up with anything creative off the top of my head. Give me 5 days. We hadn't talked about this, so I'll come back. But, it's really about...
You do that. You go home and think about this stuff and you formulate your answers. I like that.
I will do that. So it really is about that. It's about giving people a reason, right? So that's all you can do. You're right, you cannot make somebody want to come in and be healthier. As you and I know, there's triggers for it, right? When somebody's diagnosed with something, when somebody's hit a certain weight level, when they've lost a husband because for whatever reason, or a wife.
Divorce.
Exactly.
High school reunion.
Yeah, exactly.
Wedding. I've heard of
right.
There's a catalyst for change.
Started dating again. Been down that path.
Right. So you're like, gotta tone it up.
Right.
I've seen all of that. I wish that there was a magic formula you could give someone and say, this is how you stick with it. I'm trying to do that with Community Fitness, another product drop there, but we're trying to engage people, and I see some of the members of the program out there. Maybe we'll go out and talk to them. We should go out on the exercise floor at some point. But how do we get anybody? I keep saying average person, but really, everyone from the elite athlete to the most because exercise is a skill set too. Some people, I can relate with this. We had a conversation the other day, and I said, I'm the type of person who doesn't like to do things I'm not good at. So if I try something and I'm not instantly or quickly, pick up on it, I'm more prone to say, I don't like doing that. I'm not going to do that, instead of taking it as a challenge. And I think the average person who you sit down on a bench press, to you and me, it's pretty easy. Balance, coordination. Well, a lot of people just don't have that skill set. They just don't want to fail, or they don't want to hurt themselves, or they fear if they're going to do long-term dance. All that stuff runs through people's heads. What's the magic bullet? That's what the quest is.
If I actually knew that, do you think I would be sitting here?
No, you wouldn't. You'd be on a mountain. We'd all be climbing up to you.
It's the age-old question, motivation. And so to your point, you can ask top elite athletes, and they've all had a motivation problem at various points in their life. Yeah. And so it's not just people walking into a gym for the first time. It's how do you keep yourself motivated? I've gone through periods, I'm sure, everybody goes through periods of waxing and waning on enthusiasm for fitness or for eating right. Sometimes you're, have the salad all day long, and other days all you want to do is eat cookies, right? Right. So I think it's human life, and I think, again, today where we are as a society, I think we've had a lot of unfortunate sort of bad information about our diets, about fitness, about all that. And I think some of that is being cleaned up because we realize as a country, we've got an epidemic, first of all. We have healthcare costs we can't control, and 75% of our healthcare cost is triggered by obesity. So we know we have to do something about it. We're bankrupting our country because of our weight problem. So I think they're starting to be more focused on it for that reason. And I'd love to say it was something else, but I truly believe it's economics in this case with our government. So I think we'll start to see more traction there. And again, you're seeing more money, more investment dollars going into solutions for that. So whether it's apps or it's research companies or biomedical or whatever, that's really what I think we're going to see in the future. So.
Now, will you talk about this? We talked about it before. Yeah. Will you talk about your work with the government? You mentioned the government and its economics. Will you talk about, you worked with Michelle Obama, right?
I worked
on some programs that we wanted to
We were sort of supporting the Let's Move program with the database that I had started. I did go and meet with Sam Cass and Michelle and the team at the White House, but that was a few years ago. So it was all about trying to kickstart programs, and again, I'll just say we had some solutions that weren't necessarily implemented, unfortunately, but there's some options out there that could probably make it easier for people.
So, true or false, our government is acting in our best interest from a health standpoint currently?
Hard to answer that question. I think they've made some positive changes. So I know we were talking about this a minute ago, the fact that sugar is now it's going to have a daily value, a percentage daily value that's recommended. We've never had that, right?
What do you know what it is? What that number is? It's measured in grams, right? Is there a daily?
I don't remember. I wish I did. I'm sorry. It's embarrassing, but I don't. No, I've been away from that level of data.
That's right. I mean,
no, but I think just the fact that it's there, and now you're going to be able to measure that on your nutrition fact panel, whereas before it was just a number. Now it's going to say percent daily value. So if you eat that cookie, you're going to know it's 19% of your daily value for sugar.
Right.
I don't know how many people look at that stuff. I mean, the numbers are all over the board. If you actually look at research reports, some people will say, 100% of people look at the label, and others will say like 20%. So
well, they look at it, but what are they looking at?
Yeah,
I've
exactly.
I've gone in and done like corporate
right?
wellness, lunch talks, and you bring up a nutrition panel and you go down and explain what these things are, and people are just mystified by it. It's like, so they're looking at it, but what's it telling us?
Right.
And also sugar, when you're talking about a daily value, and you use cookie as an example, should I eat that cookie? Fruit is basically sugar. I mean, it's sugar and some fiber and some water. The average person says, I'm eating healthy. My daughter will say, I'm eating healthy, I'm eating an orange. But I know it has about 20 grams of sugar in
you have to temper that, but I think, I'd rather have her eat the orange than the cookie, because usually, I shouldn't say that 100%, but usually there's more fiber and there's nutrients in that orange. There's not usually a ton of nutritional value in a cookie.
No.
Some of them have been built now, Hashi had some
too.
great cookies, by the way, that actually had a lot of fiber and oatmeal and good things.
What about Kind bars?
Kind bars.
Kind bar fan?
I am a Kind bar fan.
Yeah?
Yeah, because I think that
My wife put a bunch of Kind bars in my kids' stockings, right? Healthy snacks and stuff like that. And my daughter ate one.
I wouldn't say they're like the utmost.
Well, my daughter ate one. We went to the gym yesterday.
Yeah.
Got home. She said, I'm going to eat my Kind bar after my workout because it's healthier. And then she ate it, and it has lower sugar. I think it's 5 grams of sugar.
Exactly right. 5 to 7 grams
and
usually.
She says, this tastes like crap. Santa Claus ripped me off.
Really?
That's what she said.
Did she have one of the chocolate ones or one of just the plain ones?
It was the dark chocolate sea salt.
She did not like that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, if you're eating a high sugar diet and you eat something that has less sugar, doesn't it just comparatively taste like crap?
That's true.
You're like, I'm used to this high sugar experience. I mean, that's what...
It is all about adjusting our palate. You're absolutely right.
Yeah,
I mean, we have too much sodium, way too much sugar. And if you go overseas, which obviously I've done a lot of, you will find a very different palate over there. So, I mean, you'll have something that they...
More sugar or less sugar?
Way less. Europe has way less. Africa
I'm always
has
fascinated
way less.
by people who have, through the years, clients have gone, I'm going to Italy, I'm going to Europe. And they come back and they've lost weight, even though they said, I ate like a horse. But it's real foods, it's whole foods,
Well, it's that.
right?
They don't have usually as much convenience factor, although Europe is now pretty equal to here. I think the big factor for me, because I always drop 10 pounds when I go overseas, the big factor for me is everything is walkability over there. Here in the U.S., we sit in our cars for hours on end, right? We do. You can't, in Rochester even, unless you live right here, right downtown, where World Gym is, you are not walking. You're not walking to your grocery store. You're not walking to go out to dinner. And so when you're overseas, like when I went for the first time to Cape Town in South Africa, I did not rent a car. And I literally had my bike with me because I was training for Ironman. I had a backpack. I would go to the grocery store, and I lived, unfortunately, I had an Airbnb for $600 a month. I lived at the top of a hill, like at the freaking top of an insanely high hill. And so I would buy a gallon of like a giant,
not so great.
It was like a vat of water. I don't even think it was a gallon. I don't even know what the hell it was. It was huge. And I would put it on my back.
It's like the water cooler jugs.
I mean, this is after biking 60 miles of 10,000 feet of elevation, going to the gym, swimming, doing weights. I was out of my mind exhausted, and I'd be carrying my groceries uphill. That is why I lost 10 pounds overseas, not because there's no sugar in the food. So
get an Airbnb in South Africa, live on a hill.
That's exactly right.
Bike everywhere.
Oh, I guarantee you'll lose weight if you do that.
Let's talk about your fitness, but one last thing I want to talk about nutrition. What's the biggest lie on our nutrition labels today?
Probably around fat. Our government has not done a very good job of educating people on the fact that there are good fats. I think our government, I'm not saying because they are responsible for the nutrition fact now, I think we're starting to get more messaging around that, but I still think there's this overarching negative aura around fat. And you can disagree with me. I think it's gotten better with paleo and with people more focused.
I wouldn't. I eat a lot of fat.
But people, there is this whole negative. It's ketogenic. That whole thing is starting to change. I think people's perception, but that's still a very small percent of the population. Right. The overarching population, I think, still believes fat is bad, and fat is essential. You can't live without fat in your diet. Your brain wouldn't function, just like with glucose, right? That's the other thing. I can't stand when people say, I am on a no-carb diet. No, you're not. You'd be dead. You can't live with no carbs, right? But people don't think about the fact that fruits and vegetables are carbohydrates, right? They're like, I don't have any carbs in my diet.
Right, they're
you
less,
have to have carbs.
But, yes.
Right, so I think those are two fallacies.
Usually processed carbs and things like that. But
exactly.
So you think the fat fallacy is still the biggest lie on the nutrition label today?
Yeah, I mean, that, and then again, the good, bad carb thing, I guess, if you want to talk about that. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of fallacies. I mean, one little tidbit, you probably know this, is when you have calories on a nutrition fact panel, it can vary plus or minus by about 10%.
Really?
Yeah. So if you think you're eating a 500 calorie product, it could be 550 calories. Not that that's going to make or break you, but you put that on every product you eat throughout the day, it can add up.
The only way you can really see how much calories is in a food, don't you have to burn it up? Isn't there like this process?
Yeah, you have to go through a whole chemical analysis, right?
Right, the value of...
Yeah, that's all the food scientists that do that in the manufacturing.
So the government says, okay, we're not going to hold your feet to the fire on this. We'll give you a little leeway.
They do give you leeway.
And then they'll test it out.
And then even more so, what is really scary to me is if you go into a grocery store and there's prepared foods there, there's really no requirement today for them to measure that food. So if you think about, you prepare meals, right? You're in the midst of working on something like that, and we did that. You have to educate every single person touching those meals on the quantities of the meal, like how much rice am I putting, how much, and it varies. And I think you're going to have a heavy hand in some cases, and you could end up a couple hundred calories heavier than you think you are. So you got to be careful with those.
But how important in the overall picture of health is that precise measuring of calories anyway? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree with you.
When people
it's
get
what you're eating versus how
obsessed
much.
with how many calories am I taking into my body? We talked the other day about you maybe briefly entertain the idea of getting into bodybuilding. You've decided not to. Good for you.
So far, because I could never probably.
But there's a community where precision is everything, right?
Exactly.
People say, well, I've interviewed people that have done their first bodybuilding show, and I said, how did you stay on point, with such, finite, measurable quantities that you're eating? And it was fear that motivated it, because they didn't know if they didn't stay on point, they're just going to blow it. They're going to blow the whole thing.
Yeah.
So there's that mentality. But I see that in the community at large, where people are just very, tight on that calorie window that they're going to consume. And I think it's a lot of wasted energy and worry.
I could not agree with you more.
By and large, if you got calorie in, calorie out, and it's pretty all right, and you've got a good mix of macronutrients, protein, carbohydrates, and fat, you're gonna do what you do.
To your point, as we said earlier, it's really about the whole foods. I'm not sure if we said it on the podcast or if we were talking ahead of time.
No, we mentioned it.
If you're eating, whole foods, if you're eating fruits, vegetables, lean proteins, healthy grains, and you're keeping your sugar to a minimum.
Yolk in there, and it's got fat, and it's got cholesterol, and you're
eating,
like,
if you're keeping your food fairly clean, then calories shouldn't really be a huge focus. I mean, it's to some degree it's about portion, right? You have to make sure if you're going to have a piece of steak for dinner, some people do.
Right.
You can't have it be like 24 ounces, right? You gotta keep it down to 6 ounces. They always say it's a card deck. You gotta think about the card deck, right? For the piece of salmon or the piece of meat or whatever you're eating, and if you can do that, you shouldn't be sitting there going, I don't know if it's 567 or 572. Doesn't matter, right?
All right, we are back. We're talking about fitness now. We're going to segue. That was a hard segue right there. We were talking about nutrition. This is Anissa Buckley. I am John H. This is Healthy Edge Rochester. Just to reset everything. We talked a lot about you've mapped out all this food. You have this database. You sold it though, right?
I sold it many years ago. I do not do that anymore. Yeah.
When you sold that business, you decided to climb some mountains and ride bikes and swim and run Ironmans. Why? And tell us a little bit about that transition into that phase of your life.
Yeah, I mean, it was a complete transition because I had been very corporate and I hadn't had the time really to be able to go do this stuff. So
did you get up at like 5 o'clock in the morning in the hotel rooms though and go down and hit the treadmills or
for like an hour, right? That's all you could do.
But you were still into fitness.
I was always into fitness. I've been a runner since I was 18.
Okay.
But I'd done marathons here and there, stuff like that, but never really could I take on a full Ironman. It takes over your life. It doesn't have to, but I think the first time through, as you're learning, it does because you're spending so much time trying to figure out all the details and how do I measure this and all that. So long story short, why? Because I had always wanted to. It's been on my bucket list since I was a kid, as had hiking Kilamanjaro. I had an ex-boyfriend actually remind me of that a few weeks ago. He said, I'm glad you finally did it because he said you used to talk about it. So these things have always been out there for me, but I always had the obligation of work. I was always working really hard, lots of hours, and then I had my parents around and I spent a lot of time with them, and I've been married a couple of times, so I mean, I've had, unfortunately, a lot of, not
little
unfortunately,
detours,
it's just life, right? You have life, and then my life drastically changed. So I went through a divorce, I sold a business, and both of my parents passed away in 2014, within about 8 months of each other, all of this. And that just opened up.
If you're ever going to go climb a mountain, that's probably the set of circumstances that would set you on your course.
It sets you on your course, and then you...
Naturally, I'm going to climb a mountain.
Yeah, so the first thing I really did, though, was the Ironman. So I trained for about a year and a half. I hadn't planned on that. I was supposed to do one in 2015, Louisville, and for reasons, I got back into work again, unfortunately, and then I got back out of it. I lost a couple months of training, and I just decided not to do Louisville. So the following year, I did Maryland, Ironman Maryland. So I did that in 2016. So I trained basically for a long time, and I was kind of hopping all over the world doing that. I was very lucky to be able to bike Lanzarote, which is the second hardest Ironman course. I went there for a month and a half and biked.
And when you say Lanzarote, I don't even know where that is.
To the Canary Islands. So it's off the coast, the northern coast of Africa. It's owned by Spain. So I went to the Canary Islands and did that. I went to Cape Town and biked. I did a race called the Argus, which is in March, and I may go do that again this year. They actually had an ultra marathon I did there at the same time, so I kind of got the run in with the bike while I was there. It was a 35-miler called Two Oceans. You go from the Atlantic to the Indian.
I read about that.
But yeah.
I read about that. And, the person who wrote my first 100 marathons wrote about that.
Interesting.
The Two Oceans ultra marathon.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's very cool.
I was going to ask you the other day if you'd ever heard about it. Correct, you've done it.
I've done it, yeah.
You've been there.
I have.
Talk about climbing Kilimanjaro. I mean, talk about the preparation, how it was different. Did it actually prepare you? Is it like a sport where you can only train by doing it? I mean, can you ever really prepare for that?
I think
you've climbed, you didn't climb Everest, but you've climbed the Himalayas.
Yeah,
right?
Yes, I did.
Talk about some of that stuff.
The Annapurna circuit in the Himalayas is about a 110-mile trek. You go up to almost 19,000 feet there. Mount Kilimanjaro actually is 19,300. So I've never gone over 20,000 feet, but when you're up at that level, you're at about 50% of your oxygen level. And so some people will tell you buy an oxygen deprivation mask. I've had friends who've done that for different races, like I did the Spartan Beast race several years ago, and that was, 5,500 feet maybe. Those masks haven't seemed to prepare people, so I kind of forewent that. In my opinion, you're right. I mean, the practical, there's never going to be anything to replace actually doing it, right? So I did go to Colorado this summer. I was fortunate enough to actually get a backpack, go to a couple 14ers, they'll call them, 14,000 feet. But again, I don't start to have any kind of problems till I hit about 17,000 feet, so it doesn't really help me all that much. Right. What does help is building up your leg strength and your core strength. So for me, doing step-ups in the gym with weights. So I'll hold, two 20-pound kettlebells and do step-ups with those.
Okay.
Hiking Bristol. I went to Bristol several times here, actually. I've done that for a number of different things.
Just walk up the slopes?
It's a lot harder than you think it is. It's some
I've
work.
skied twice in my whole life, and they were both at Song Mountain in Tully. And I just went to the top and looked down the hill, and I'm like, that's pretty steep.
They're pretty steep, yeah.
So I imagine
they're
walking
really
up, it's
hard.
hard.
And then I used to put a 25, 30-pound backpack on me and do that. Squats, all the things you and I have talked about that really build your leg strength and then your core strength. Again, that's, for me, incline crunches I do.
Is it similar to like our bro workouts where you do like a 3-day split? Are you training like pyramid sets? Are you doing like longer supersets with higher reps, 20, 30 reps? I mean, you stay in the 10 to 15 rep. What is the...
I was doing very
approach?
high rep, and a lot of the time, I'm kind of crisscrossing the conversation here. You're asking about training for the mountains, but training for me is, a lot of conditioning for me has been really for both, for Ironman and for the mountains. And so a lot of what I've done, you could argue with this, but especially when you're an Ironman, it is body weight. You're not using a lot of heavy weight. You are when you're doing step-ups for a mountain, but a lot of the time you're just doing body weight because you're so fatigued from all the time on the bike and the swim and the run. You don't want to put a lot of pressure on your legs, so you're basically just doing air squats, So I would do 3 sets of 50, for example, on plates. I would do 3 sets of 50 crunches on an incline bench, not with no weights, just body weight, right?
Did you download these workouts? Did you make them up? I mean, where did you develop your methodology?
I had a close friend who had done 20 Ironmen and had been through a lot of the training before, and so I got some help there, and I also got some help from when I lived in Austin, Texas for about 18 months of this period. And there's a great group called Austin Aquatic Sports Academy, run by Brendan Hansen, 4-time Olympian. He headed up the swim, and there was a great tri coach. I learned a lot there as well in terms of just conditioning the body. So push-ups, the basic stuff.
It's important to you to kind of lean on the experts for some advice.
In those kinds of things, because I'd never done an Ironman, so I didn't really know what to expect in terms of how much my body could handle outside of just, when you're biking for 4 or 5 hours, 3-4 times a week, and then you're actually running like a half marathon every other day, and you're swimming in between that, you don't have a lot of energy left for heavy weightlifting. So you've got to sort of modify what you typically would do. This is my opinion. Maybe the pros would tell you something differently. I don't think so. I think in the off season they do a lot of the heavy stuff. They build those legs up, just like with pro cycling, right? They build the legs up in the off season,
and
then
you bulk up.
Yeah.
You got bulk season, and you got cutting season.
Yeah,
so you got strength
in season, or as you're
endurance.
heading pretty close within 4 months of that Ironman race, you want to sort of taper back on what you're doing.
Gotcha. I was just giving a thumbs up out on the exercise floor there, because psychology is part of this too, right?
Yeah.
Did you feel like with both the Ironman and climbing that you were the day of, where the rubber meets the road, you were there, you were doing it? Did you feel you were adequately prepared, or was it a holy shit, I'm not ready for this, I just gotta use that grit to get through, right?
I think whether you're prepared or not, you're still using grit, because I think if you're not prepared, you're going to go a little slower. If you're prepared, you're going to go a little faster. In my Ironman, I felt prepared for both, really. I did. I don't think I could have done a whole lot more. I might have been a little burned out mentally by the time I got to the Ironman, because as I mentioned to you, I was going to do one.
So you would have maybe shortened your
I would absolutely shorten. As a matter of
cycle?
fact, I'm doing the Boulder half. I don't know if I'm doing a full this year or not. I'm going to do the Boulder half, and I will not even start thinking about that until probably April. Not even going there. So, because now I know what to do. Do you know what I mean? I can prepare myself, and I'm going to go hardcore.
Which is a double-edged sword.
This is going to be for time. So you
talked about that.
You asked me what my goal was this year. My goal will be in that one to do a 5:45, hopefully on that. Okay. And I want to go sub 12 on a full whenever I decide to do it. So that just takes a different mindset than this one was just to finish, this time around. But I felt prepared for both. Absolutely felt good on both occasions. The runs stunk in both cases on my half Ironman and my full Ironman last year. Part of that was weather in both cases. I'm going to make that an excuse. It really shouldn't be, but we had a 96-degree day with like 90% humidity here in Syracuse when I did the half. My bike was great. My run stunk because they'd added 1,000 feet of elevation into that run as well. And then when I went to Maryland,
oh, by the way, it was 96 degrees.
Oh, it was awful.
That changes everything.
It does. And then when we went to Maryland, they basically had like a tidal wave, and so the run was an out and back a number of times, and a number of times we were running through a foot at least of water. And you know how that.
What year was that?
2016.
I think I was in Ocean City when that hurricane blew up the coast.
it was awful weather, and we were biking, total wind and rain.
Making these big rip tides.
Yeah, it was not fun. But you know what they'll tell you? You signed up for an Ironman. What do you mean? It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be handed to you. So just take it and go with it. So you do the best you can.
And you did it.
Yeah, I did.
Okay. Well, I was going to ask you 3 things you want to accomplish in 2018. You've told us the one. You said the half marathon in 5:45. That's 5 hours 45 minutes. Okay. 2 other things.
Well, I'm probably going back to South Africa to do the Argus and the 2 Oceans again, which will be a big one for me because we're talking 3 months away and I are 4 months away, and I'm not prepared. So the third piece would be to drop some weight, and not because it's not an aesthetic thing necessarily. It's a performance thing. It's about performance and easing that pressure on my body to be able to run 35 miles.
Any time goals for those events? Because you've done them before.
Yeah.
I mean, is it enough to just go back and do it again? Is that a goal?
Right now, for the ultra, it will be for this time.
A date on the calendar.
It's right now. It's just going to be to do the best I can with that one because I don't really. I haven't been training for that at all. So
that's kind of out there. To set a time goal for that.
Okay, I'll give you that next time.
And what's number 3?
Well, those were together. So
oh no, you're shortcutting it. Those are 2 events that are happening back to back.
Okay, we'll give you number 3.
Give me 3.
I will give you number 3. It's not quantifiable. But I am becoming a convert because I've never been a yoga or meditation person. And I think the older I'm getting, so I hit 50 last year, and I think the older I'm getting, the more I'm realizing recovery is a big buzzword for this year, as you probably know, here in fitness.
Absolutely.
And that's an area for me personally I need help in because I'm not great at recovery. I'm really good at pushing hard. I'm not really good at backing off, so I need to learn to do that.
So will you commit to once a week?
I will likely do it once a week. I mean, I stretch. Don't get me wrong. It's just to go to a class. I need to get the time.
Going back to the opening segment we did here. Thank you. I was going to say what keeps people from achieving the goal that they know that they should be doing.
That's right.
It's a commitment, right? On some level, it's saying I will do this. It's a line in the sand.
Correct.
And then it's I will do this.
I will do this.
I'm going to do this. It's done.
I think we're good.
I think we are.
All right.
We've made our point here. Want to go out and do some exercise?
I would love to actually watch you do exercise.
I want to see your step up. Well, I need someone to assess. I was just thinking of this today. Like the squat, like I have a flexibility issue and maybe a little muscle imbalance issue. And I was just thinking today, I would love someone to assess, probably a physical therapist, what rehabilitation type exercises I need to do to stabilize my knee, ankle, because you want to keep them in alignment, right? You track your knee over your toe when you're doing the squat. And I just have this, I don't know if it's an inflexibility. It wants to kind of shear. And then I feel the shearing force in your knee, right? I mean, I still just dog it through and,
Careful.
I have grit.
Well, I've got piriformis issues right now too. I can't run.
Let's tease this next segment. Watch 2 mature people go out and struggle through their
the 50 plus, the senior category
restrictions, and maybe injuries. I don't know, but yeah, you want to go out and do some stuff?
Yeah, love to do it. Let's do it.
I want to see your step ups with your kettlebells.
Great.
Yeah, let's go.
All right.
Hey guys, we're back. We're out on the weight room floor here at World Gym Rochester. We're down on East Avenue, and I was just telling Anissa, 159. I feel like we're making a car commercial.
159.
Diogardi.
All day long.
World Gym 159 for the year through December 31st.
WorldGymRochester.com.
Come on down.
Let's talk about the step up, because we talked about in the our studio some of the exercises you did to get ready to climb mountains and do Ironman, which not my Ironman.
Iron Woman.
That's right.
We're going to start that.
But let's go over the basics here.
Okay.
You know, we've got a box.
Yep.
And we want to step up onto it. We're
Yep.
going to use the glutes. We're going to use the quads.
Right.
A couple pointers. Maybe you can explain.
Yeah. So basically, you want to
Heel
have
strike.
your foot, perpendicular, right, on a 90-degree angle. And you really don't. What you don't want to do is be pushing off with your back foot. Instead, you want to isolate and use your glutes and actually your quads as well. Really, in doing that. So you're. And I unfortunately have an injury right now, so I'm not doing this as gracefully. I should probably use my other foot. But essentially the point is not to be leaning forward. It's to stay as upright as you can and use those glute muscles.
What are the ramifications of leaning forward like that? Is there like I talk about the shearing force on the knees. I mean, if you're climbing a mountain, a 19,000 square foot high mountain, you know, doing that over and over again. Do you know how many footsteps it takes you to climb that mountain? Did you measure that? Did you have a pedometer on?
I did not wear my pedometer.
That would be interesting to know.
It took me 3 days though.
3 days?
Summit, yeah, and there's anywhere from 3 to 11 days to summit. So.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay. So, needless to say, there's a lot of footsteps involved.
There's a lot of upward steps.
And to do the wrong action that many times would be detrimental in many ways. Could you injure yourself?
I think if you think about it, you've got a heavy pack on your back, right?
Right.
So you're carrying 40, 50 pounds on your back.
And it's changing your center of gravity.
Exactly. If you are leveraging, if you're moving forward, there's a huge chance you'll fall forward with all that weight on you. You have to keep, that's why the core is also very important when you're doing that kind of hiking, because you actually need to keep, your strength. You got to use your core to actually hold all that weight.
Right.
So you want to be stepping up onto those rocks. You're doing this when you're hiking Kilamanjaro. You're stepping onto rocks and going vertically up. So,
did you train with a weighted vest at all?
I trained with a backpack. So I actually put the backpack on, put weight in it, and would carry that up hills. So I did do that.
Did you do any extra tube while you're stepping up? And adding some resistance?
I didn't. But
this was just laying here conveniently enough.
Weights. I mean, I would take 2 kettlebells. So 2 20-pound kettlebells, and use that. So basically, you're again just adding weight. It's helping. It's comparable to what you'd have on your back.
Sure. It's adding that stress on all the joints and the nervous system. I mean, you've just got to prepare to carry that extra weight.
There's a nervous system issue when you're hiking a mountain.
There's tons of nervous system issues.
One of the biggest factors is really you're at 50% oxygen, so you're not even thinking clearly. You've got to prepare your body here because you lose sort of half of what you know when you're on that mountain. It sounds silly, but you are in a haze when you're at the top because you're sleeping at 17,000, 18,000 feet. So your brain's not getting all the oxygen in.
Well, you were an athlete. You played sports,
Still
right?
I am, actually. So.
Well, I mean, like a competitive athlete in our school days, right?
Yes.
So I think the adage or the parallel is you train in the fundamentals. So then when the game starts, you aren't thinking about that, you're just performing.
Exactly.
So the comparison is when you're climbing the mountain, the last thing you need to think about is the proper heel strike, the knee position. That all should have been ingrained into your muscle memory.
It's the good habit thing, right?
Yeah.
So if you hold yourself up, you've got a strong core, your posture is going to be better, everything you do is going to be better, right? Versus walking around like this.
Right, you're building in bad habits.
Yeah.
What about Jacob's Ladder, step mills, Stairmasters? Do you use all that stuff on the cardio floor?
I did. Again.
You wearing a weight vest? I see those people in the cardio floor with that 20, 40-pound weight vest.
I did not
Firefighters come to mind. They have to do a stair test with an 80-pound equipment pack or,
I didn't. Good question, why? I mean, I could have. I just didn't. But I did do a lot of elliptical, a lot of stairs. Stairs were very key.
It's more or less being in shape, getting your conditioning up,
and keeping your
which
weight
is a combination
down.
of strength.
You want to keep your body
awareness,
weight low, right? Keep your body fat level down, obviously, because then, body weight.
But there's a trade-off. You don't want to get emaciated. You don't want to get so skinny you can't carry that damn pack.
But
yes, you're right.
Strength, but you really don't want to carry any extra weight up that hill. Just like when you're doing an Ironman, the big thing is to be as lean as you can. You don't want to carry. You're going 140 miles, right?
Right. I'm blocking this
140.6
thing.
miles.
My
you do not want to be carrying an extra 12 pounds.
Right. Well, anyone that's gone out and played a sport that they used to play and haven't played for a long time, like for me, basketball, if I went on the court right now, I'm 10 pounds heavier than I should be.
Right.
I'm going to notice that 10 pounds.
You're going to feel it.
So
your joints feel it.
it only makes sense to take that
Correct.
excess weight and be at more of your, natural weight, your training weight, your in good shape weight.
Yes.
Right?
Correct.
Okay. Well, let's talk about a couple other exercises. You mentioned you did a lot of squats.
Yep.
But you did body weight squats, like air squats. Can you demonstrate like the proper form?
What I would do is I would just do an incline body weight squat. And so essentially what you're doing, you're just putting your heels on the back of the plate, and you're really just, going into a squat position, just like you're sitting in a chair, right? So you don't want to be leaning forward, because it's going to put extra pressure on your knees. It's going to make it easier actually to do that squat, as opposed to, going down in a straight position. You're using really your glutes and again, your quads to lift yourself up. So, I would do 3 sets of 50 of these, really just to keep my quads strong for hiking up those mountains.
Now, the significance of the plates are
more isolation of your quads.
Right.
So when I was doing a lot of biking for Ironman, this was helpful in just keeping those quads, like kind of flushing through the lactic acid, keeping them strong, without putting a lot of pressure, because when you are in that training mode for Ironman, you're spending so many hours on bikes and running, you do not want extra weight. You don't want to be carrying extra weight. You're just too fatigued to have extra weight when you're doing these kind of things.
Right.
So body weight is enough with this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the other reason people put plates underneath their heels is because they lack the flexibility through the ankle and the Achilles area.
Great point.
So, where a flat foot will kind of throw you off and make you squat like this, the elevated heels allows you to sit back into it. So, it's a valid point.
Yeah.
But simultaneous to doing this, along with training this way, I would try to lengthen those. You mentioned yoga.
Yeah.
Yoga, the down dog position is ideal for just kind of opening them up. And kettlebell work, we've talked about kettlebell work. There's a couple of kettlebell exercises I like to use that help maintain my flexibility back there.
Okay.
You ever do the windmill?
You show me what it looks like and I'll tell you if I've done it.
Okay, well, you get your kettlebell up. See if I can show everybody that's watching live too. All right, they're gonna see me from the backside. So what you do is you elevate the kettlebell over the shoulder. I like to try to get my hip and my heel all in alignment. And I turn that opposite foot out about 90 degrees, maybe a little less. And I'm going to, as I'm looking up at the kettlebell, I'm gonna push my hip back over here. And that's hitting everything. You mentioned a bad piriformis. That's just going to kind of pull those hips, the piriformis. It's going to open it up. You'll feel it all down through the adductor, right down through the inside of the leg. And improve your length there as well as strength. And then you can do a kettlebell deadlift, a straight leg deadlift, where I like to hinge at the hips, push the hips back. So I'm just kind of suspending the kettlebell between my insteps. And then back up.
Good stuff.
Yeah, I keep my shoulders back, down, retracted, shoulder blades. Keep my traps kind of loose. And, oh yeah, feel that. So you just kind of stay rigid through the torso, and you push your hips back underneath you, and you have no choice but to stand up. And I short arm it. So I'm not rounding out through the shoulders. Yeah.
No, I've done more of the swings, really just the basics, right?
Yes, swings
Which
are
is
good.
Really for your glutes again. I'm a big glute person, obviously.
Yeah, this
pretty key with everything I do, really. So I've probably overworked those a little bit, but it keeps me strong. I mean, I climb mountains really well. I did the triple bypass last year, which is 120 miles and 10,000 feet of climbing in Colorado. Lots of hills.
Wow.
So it's all about
triple bypass. It sounds
it sounds medical.
like something you would never want to do.
Exactly, but it's fun.
But
It's actually
there's
great.
people
We're
out
the
there that
best
go,
supported race.
triple bypass, let me do that. Any other things that you see around here that you utilize in your training? We could give our viewers
There's so much.
Little
I mean,
demonstration.
Lots of
You
things.
do a lot of upper body strength
I
stuff
do.
at all?
I'm actually very excited. This year I just started doing unweighted, so just my body weight pull-ups. So that's kind of a new thing for me. I had not done those before, so I'm kind of easing into that. So I am building the upper body right now.
To me, the pull-up is the women in the gym in 2017 versus 1997.
Yeah.
I always say, I've said
There's
this,
a lot of
I've said
women
this on
doing
the show.
them now.
1997, if I could find 5 women in the city of Rochester that could do a body weight pull-up,
Yeah.
I think that would be a lot.
Yeah.
Now, everybody does them.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about everybody, but there's a lot. It's still hard. I think it's hard.
It is hard. It's a challenge.
You have to work up to it, right?
Yeah.
So,
but you can do one.
Yeah. No, actually, I can do 4.
We got a pull-up bar over there.
Not right now.
No?
I did them this morning.
Oh,
I'm
you're
sure I can.
fatigued. Okay. All right. Well,
Maybe on our next time.
yeah. Well, thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having
This
me.
was
It was
good.
great. A lot of fun.
Yeah, we learned some things.
We
and
did.
Yeah, I'm still digesting it all. I'll have to go back and watch it, see what I
good.
learned,
All
and
good.
have a follow-up.
All right.
But that's Anissa Buckley. I'm John H. This is Healthy Edge Rochester. We're right here at World Gym Rochester on East Avenue. Take a look around, see all the energy, feel it. January 1st is coming. I hope to see you down here working out right alongside me. Thanks, and have a great day.